Welcome back to The Price of Business. I am your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. I tell you, I was checking out recently in the Wall Street Journal an article on the campaign to stop fresh college thinking is so pervasive out there. College kids telling their university they don't want a particular speaker to come in because it doesn't fit their conventional wisdom. It's really a hostile environment in academia today. It's kind of like Germany just before the formal rise of the Nazi regime. It's an intellectual totalitarianism that's extremely lockstep and frightening to watch. John Hardin is with a group called the Koch Foundation, and it is exactly like the Koch brothers because I believe it was founded by one of them, and KOCH. And, in fact, you can find it online, charleskochinstitute.org. And, John, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So you're a PhD in what?
In history, U.S. history. So I did my doctorate at the University of Maryland, 20th century U.S. history.
Yeah, we can geek out together. History is one of my favorite topics. Yeah, and so I'm wondering, are you like the brothers? Are you kind of is the Institute kind of libertarian in this approach?
Well, so we're the private foundation for Charles Koch, who you mentioned, one of the brothers that people talk about. And Charles's intention with the foundation, his goal is that he's always supported, he's been supporting for higher education for nearly 40 years now, because he believes that education is obviously a fundamental part of our society, of any society that's going to enable people to prosper. And so he supports over 250 schools right now across the country so that they have the resources to create a diversity of ideas on campus, right? So that they have the opportunity to support these scholars to provide programs, and they can teach courses, things like that, where they're addressing questions about what are the conditions and the ideas and the institutions that help people to flourish. Yeah,
that's very interesting. Very interesting. So, you feel like it has no ideological bent, or is it simply trying to? And by the way, I'm a libertarian. I consider myself a small L libertarian. One time Republican, not Republican. I don't think I ever considered myself a Republican. Conservative, very disgruntled conservative for much of my life. The cliche: a conservative is a liberal that's been mugged. That's a cliche. And I've added to that, a libertarian is a conservative who's figured out who's doing the mugging.
Nice.
And so... So I make myself laugh. But, the thing about it is that I kind of gravitate that way. So, what are you trying to do for these young people? Because we know that in academia today, and 90% plus, and I'm being very generous when I implied that there may be 10% that are contrarian, 90% of these schools are being taught in a doctrinaire, brainwashing, lockstep sort of way. Don't you agree with that?
Well, it is unfortunate when you do look across the landscape, like you noted, that there is this sort of growing intolerance, it seems, on campuses, where there are these disinvitations and there's claims of microaggressions and trigger warnings, those types of things. What we're doing, our goal is to provide the resources to professors that want to bring some alternative views or just a diversity of views into the classroom, that want to have the courage to stand up against that campus orthodoxy or that groupthink. And so, there's a lot of different ways that we can come at these questions and these problems, and we should be considering all those different ideas.
Yeah, it's more like heterodoxy, isn't it, rather than orthodoxy?
Yeah, true.
So, how old is the Institute?
So the Institute and the Foundation have been around for it's about 10 or 15 years. I'm actually not 100% positive.
Okay.
But Charles's support for higher education goes back nearly 40 years through other means to other organizations and things, and then he created the Koch Foundation itself later on in the 80s. So I think it was in the 80s, so that he could really target his philanthropy towards supporting these types of programs in higher ed.
Okay. And so what kind of response are you getting?
Well, we get a great response from professors and administrations on campuses because they're excited. They want to advance more diverse ideas. They want to broaden access to ideas. And as you know, as I'm sure most folks know, the universities are strapped for funding. And so for us to be able to come in and provide the funding so that they can pursue their interests. Right, so this is about the universities and the schools saying, hey, we want to create this kind of program. We need the funding to do it, and we get excited to provide that. So I throw out an example, actually, I think there in the state you're in Texas, at Baylor University, they've got the Ball Center for Entrepreneurship and Free Enterprise. So we're thrilled to be able to provide funding so that center can flourish, so that it can provide students those opportunities so it can do research. And in fact, they recently, I think, hosted a roundtable not too long ago on entrepreneurship for the community to come and be a part of. So that's really cool, right, where you're opening the doors for the community, for citizens to get involved and to really participate in this education process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's obviously very timely. I like that, very timely. I've been saying for a long, long time, I like a broken record, that our problems are really systemic. And if people think we're going to change things merely through elections, it's really like Don Quixote chasing windmills. The problem, people are voting the way they're voting because of what they've been taught now for generations in the classroom. People are voting the way they are voting because the vast majority of the media is hardcore left-wing. Mainstream media is hardcore left-wing. I was so excited to hear that the Koch brothers were pursuing the Los Angeles Times, and sad to see that they gave up on that effort, because we need some true diversity in the media. And part of the problem is that there would have to be such a large purchase of so many different media in order to stem the ostracizing of those media purchases. Because look at, UPI. UPI, when it got purchased by the same people who owned the Washington Times. When that happened, it was immediately ostracized by all other media. It lost tons of relationships with other newspapers and that type of thing because of that association. That's part of the problem. But until we begin to looking at alternative public school systems, because our and when I say public schools, I mean privately funded schools, kind of like you're privately funding portions of university activity because universities won't fund it. Maybe the funding of private schools that are on a sliding scale to give people an alternative to the government schools, because as long as the government is teaching kids what the government can and cannot do, good luck maintaining a free society. All these things are systemic problems, and they need to be addressed somewhere other than just elections. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree that ideas matter. Like you said, ideas are fundamentally important. They're at the foundation of our society. They're at the foundation of the way we think, how we behave, how we act, the incentives we respond to. And so it is, like you noted, it's absolutely critical that people have the opportunity to encounter all ideas. Right? The last thing that we want is a society where any discussion is being censored, or that scholars are being suppressed or intimidated or harassed so that they can't address the controversial issues and the difficult issues and bring to bear all the different ideas that can then collide with each other. Right? That's what this is about. That's what a university is about. It's supposed to be a place where you have the freedom to engage in real intellectual debate, where ideas are competing with each other. What we see today is there's a culture developing at universities where people will be afraid to bring up an idea because they're afraid they'll be attacked for it. You should always have the freedom to express whatever idea it is that or thought or interest or question it is that's occurred to you. Unfortunately, we just don't see that flourishing today. And it's and what we're encountering, particularly what we see are these politicized attacks where you've got political interest groups that are bringing sort of Washington-style campaign tactics to campuses. And what they're doing is they're intimidating these professors and scholars by using these aggressive open records requests and other methods to really say, look, if you're going to take on that question, or if you're going to come with that perspective that we don't like, then we're going to attack you in public to try and to get you to be quiet.
Yeah, and and I sit there and I wonder why the right and why those who, even just I prefer looking at it as contrarian rather than conservative versus liberal. You need contrarian perspectives. You need revisionist views of history, or otherwise you are going to have a lockstep society. It's as simple as that.
Right. Yeah,
and
you need dissent. I mean, you
got to have dissent, or you're going to have what North Korea has eventually, and we don't foster that in this society. And so I don't know why we don't use a little bit of intimidation of our own. I don't understand why we don't boycott, to use the spin on the word boycott, media that we find offensive, and it's crazy to say we're gonna boycott a whole network we're not watching anyway, like MSNBC. But it is sensible to attack specific shows on MSNBC. Our side doesn't get it, and we are where we are today because the left does understand what works. And part of it, I think, has to do with the fact that those with more liberty-oriented ideas, those who are even more conservative-minded, are open-minded when it comes to differing views out there. So it's kind of offensive to us, but I don't know how else we counterbalance it.
Well, I think, and the encouraging thing that we see is that there are a lot of schools out there, there are a lot of professors out there, a lot of administrators that do want to encourage that open dialogue. They want to encourage folks to actually have a place where they can have real tolerance, right? We're talking about real intellectual tolerance, where anybody can express whatever opinion they have. We see that across the country. So at the same time, on one side of the coin, it's awful to see these attacks, to see this culture of intolerance that's growing. On the other side, there are some positive signs, and we're thankful to have the opportunity to engage with those folks, to provide funding so that they can have the opportunity to share their ideas and engage students.
Dr. John Hardin, he is Director of University Relations at the Charles G. Koch Foundation, and that's charleskochinstitute.org. Thanks, John, for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Kevin.
When we come back, much more for you, and you're listening to The Price of Business.
I'll buy you a diamond ring, my friend, if it makes you feel all right. I'll get you anything, my friend, if it makes you feel all right.